Let's see here. Welcome back to ranking and fighting our way through Elden Ring. Today, our next cave is going to be the Lakeside Crystal Cave here in Liurnia. The last one that we covered, I believe, was the Stillwater Cave. No, actually, it was not. We did cover the Stillwater Cave, which we gave a tier with a Clean Rot Knight getting a B tier for the boss. Since it's likely to be the first time the player encounters the Clean Rot Knight, they go this direction and haven't ventured into caving very well. I don't think it's necessarily, like, too bad to use, especially with their moveset, which is the area to find it in. Let's go to number 2. But after we covered that, I actually went into one of the Liurnia catacombs, and we fought the staff variant of the Erdtree Burial Watchdog, which definitely got a much better score than the recent fight against the sword one, who just kind of spammed in the room. That was pretty dog water. But I think this next dungeon is going to get quite a nice score. If I remember correctly, its boss is kind of lackluster. Not a very crazy or standoutish one. But it is an enemy that reoccurs quite a few times as either bosses or non-respawning mini-boss encounters. But they have a fun moveset, and they also don't appear super often throughout the game. So I usually still feel like it's always a fun time to see one. But let's see, this is probably like our 5th or 6th cave now that we've covered, I think. And like a lot of the caves that we've covered so far, a few of them have been pretty standard and haven't really been much to talk about. But this cave and several of the others we've gone over so far have kind of proven my point about how incredibly unique the caves can be. I like the coastal cave that we went over before. This one is full of the demi, which kind of act as the King's goblins, like I talked about. And they're always pretty fun to fight. They're not too brutal. But you can see with this one, instead of being this like tight, narrow, cave tunnels like we had before, we're once again in a more like wide open, spacious cavern. It's got like cracks and stuff to the outside to shine in light. You can see down that way a little bit. You just barely see it, but there's some crystal down there that we're going to get to. Comet is just such a powerful spell. Like I try to keep my spells varied for the fun aspect of it, but there's a few of them that really outperform the others. Again, they're just like CEO of jumping. They've gotten me with like everything. See, once I whip the comet out, it's kind of like taking off the training gloves. This is a nice little room. It's another little like underground spring. Now we have to descend deeper down the cave, closer to those crystals. Which the crystals are a reoccurring element all throughout the caves of Liurnia to differentiate them from Limgrave and give them that more magical vibe, and so that the sorcerers obviously have access to glintstone. There is more of it in Caelid once we get closer to Celia, with the Celia crystal mines, and then the hidden cave that's behind Celia as well. I do love the crystal cave design. I think it's cooler than the base cave design that we have in Limgrave. So I think already this cave is doing a lot to stand out. I think they put it early enough into Liurnia and in such a spot where most players, well, maybe not most players, but I'd say a fair good amount of players are likely to come through this area and happen upon this place, which is important because this is the place that you have to go to in order to get the medallion fragment. So it's kind of a necessity if you want to get the platinum experience. And like I've kind of alluded to in the past, for any of the dungeons that I think are going to be mandatory for that, like, quote-unquote full experience, I do think they should be more polished and more refined. So seeing that this one honestly has a pretty unique layout for how you navigate through it and for how it's designed, I feel like that's definitely like a good part of... Oh, I see where I have to go. Like a good part of the design of this one. Is this the boss or is it the next room over? I think it's the next room over. Yeah, it's a lot more vertical than most of the other caves, with our goal being to, like, descend this little cliffside here. Still not too long, like a lot of the caves in Limgrave. It doesn't really drag too long. The ones in Limgrave were super short. That was sort of just like a dungeon. As soon as you step into Liurnia, the Stillwater Cave in this one has sort of expanded in size, and the first catacomb that we covered, the Cliff Bottom Catacomb, definitely felt more complex and more expansive than Limgrave. Now, I did hear someone say that it sped up the set and changed the difficulty to make it a little bit more aggressive for this fight. Once you go into Liurnia and the difficulty, which I do think that is the case with the Bloodhound idea with the game. I do think it's more aggressive. I think it's like that one slash happy day. But I think the Bloodhound Knight is a lot. I think it might have been interesting to have some cooler, but at the same time, the problem here is the Albinoric woman that's over here that's like injured. Which is another thing. This dungeon has a lot of narrative significance. One of the Albinorics fled down here with her wolf, one of the ones that can't walk, with one of the halves of the medallion that leads to the Hallett tree to protect it from Sir Gideon Offhand. We can get the other half in the Albinoric village if we're exploring Liurnia thoroughly. Wait. Am I tripping? No, the other half of the medallion is in Castle Soul, I think. Yeah. Okay, hold on. I said it wrong. You get the first half of the medallion from the Albinoric here in the Albinoric village, underneath this plateau. And then you can come here to advance her quest line and have her come with you to find the second half of the medallion that is up in Castle.
Foul tarnished. What do you want? I told the all-hearing brute that I possess no such medallion. Or have you come to take more? Was my other half not enough? I told you that I possess. Or have you come? Was my other half?
Yeah, so until I go to the village of the Albinorics and get the first half of the medallion, there's really no way to talk to her or engage with her. But this dungeon does what a lot of well, not a lot of dungeons do, sorry, but what a few of the special dungeons throughout this game do, where, unlike most of the caves that simply end in a teleport back to the start, this cave actually leads back out into the world. In this case, because we've moved so low, we've descended down Liurnia's cliff face to an area that is otherwise unreachable and looks over the edge of the map towards the ocean, which is a real nice view. This is a crazy little area down here. You can see up there we have the Church of Anticipation in Stormvale, but it's really just like tucked down here like a neat little secret. And I do always give the dungeons that do stuff like that a little bit more credit for being creative and unique, and I think this dungeon all around does a pretty good job of being creative and unique, and I definitely think this dungeon overall is worthy of an A tier. I think it's one of the better cave-type dungeons, and it continues my my feeling about cave-type dungeons just being the best type of dungeons. And then, along with that, the Bloodhound Knight. I think I gave the original Bloodhound Knight Darewolf fight an A for being like a good little intro starting boss. Seeing as I think most players will have already killed that one by the time they get here, it is kind of, it's not very different even with the sped up moveset, but like I said, you really don't find many Bloodhound Knights throughout the game. There's one hidden in Raya Lucaria, but most players won't see that one. There's one hidden in the Volcano Manor, and there's a couple others throughout the game, but really I think they're a nice moveset and they're not very frequent, so I don't think it takes away from the encounter very much. It might have been a little bit cooler to have something more interesting or more themed for this area or for the dungeon at the bottom, since we like descended down this like crystal and cliff face. But at the same time, the Crystallians are used as a boss in some of the other dungeons here in Liurnia. So I don't think I would want something like the Crystallians to return for this fight. So I think it being the Bloodhound Knight is honestly perfectly fine. And it might have, like I said, narrative significance towards Sir Gideon Ofnir, of course. I think we're going to go ahead and stick with A tier for the Bloodhound Knights so far. I think that after this, they only ever reappear as mini-bosses, but if we do find another one that has a proper boss health bar, we will of course cover it too. But I think our goal after this point is probably going to be to make our way to our next Deathbird fight. This will be, this will be our third Deathbird fight, which leaves only one more regular Deathbird in the game, I believe. I think that the first Deathbird fight is great, and I would not really want to change it. The second one, to me, is a lot less cool, a lot less interesting. I think the second Deathbird has a much worse arena. It's not as atmospheric. It feels more random and cluttered. It does have good loot, but it just doesn't really impress, and it's no different from the Deathbird that you already faced up in Limgrave. It's just down in the Leafing Peninsula with, I don't even think it has a difference in health, and if it does, it's not a very significant one. So I just don't think that Deathbird really stands out at all. This third Deathbird encounter here in the swamp of Liurnia, I think, is a super easy to miss one. I think it's definitely really easy to just completely gloss over this one, because they only appear at night, and because they only appear in such, like, specific instances, really, you have to be in the right place at the right time, or you have to see the messages of other players and be guided into it. Now, unfortunately, one of the things that annoyed me about the Deathbirds is that I felt like I never knew where they would be. As soon as I found those first two, I felt like anywhere could just have a Deathbird encounter. And I always was like, oh damn, am I gonna miss one? You know, I felt like I would never be able to know. But I think all of the Deathbird encounters, except one, usually stay pretty consistent. They give you one of these ancient ruins covered in stone, glowing, so that at night you kind of see them and run up to it and take you into the fight anyway. So it's not too bad. The fourth one spawns in a random building, which, as much as that is absolutely fitting for a Deathbird, kind of breaks that. So I wouldn't even really say they did that. In spite of this, the Deathbird kind of gameplay is in these fights. This one is pretty standard though. I think this does better than the Weekend Peninsula for having a much nicer arena. You don't have the interference with like annoying action people and the fight is more chaotic. You have a nice flat ground, and honestly the atmosphere of the area is good with the tree in the background, stars, very beautiful, nice sky in. I won't do a part time on the I honestly don't think that's good kind of graphics. I gave the first one that we fought an A tier, and I gave the one in the Weeping Peninsula a C tier for being kind of trash. This one, I was gonna say B tier, honestly, kind of throw it right there in the middle, because I don't think it's as good as the first time you encounter one with that initial surprise, but I think it's better than the Weeping Peninsula variant. But at the same time, I honestly think that the starlit sky and the view and atmosphere here in Liurnia is good enough to where it kind of improves the fight to where I might just slap it in A tier. The Deathrite birds annoyed the shit out of me in my first playthrough. I absolutely hated them, and before they nerfed the Falling Star Beastjaw, when I discovered that you could use it to absolutely melt those things, I immediately went to the Deathbirds in Caelid and the Consecrated Snowfield and just completely shredded through their health bar, spamming the Ash of War until it absolutely destroyed those things. But having fought them quite a few times now, and because I love the way they look and I love their narrative significance, they don't bother me as much. Some of their attacks, or some of their fire attacks, I feel like can be a little cheap in the way that they can sort of come through the floor sometimes and hit you anyway, even when it feels like it shouldn't. But it's really not too bad. Let's probably try and slide by and get this cavalry. What is that? That's cool. Try and get this nice cavalry out of the way while we're already here in the overworld at night. I think both of the nice cavalry in Limgrave and Elden Peninsula are pretty much identical. Like, they're really just C-tier, serviceable fight. Their moveset being like the basic horse type enemies, kind of. like, they're really not too exciting. They don't feel all that different than just, like, the tree sentinels do. But they are kind of cool. They're not terrible. They just feel like a little bit middle of the road. So I feel like C is kind of a fine place for them. And I honestly think, like I said in the first stream, that we're probably going to end up throwing almost every single night, one of the Knights Cavalry fights in C2. To me, they just don't necessarily impress. I still enjoy them, and I enjoyed them in my first playthrough, but I don't know, I don't think they're necessarily standout crazy fights. The ambience for this Knights Cavalry fight feels like a little bit higher than just like that open stretch of ruin, or even the like just the little bridge that you fight in the first I don't know, I really just don't feel like they can ever deserve anything more than just a C tier. Because the thing is, I actually enjoy the Tree Sentinels and Loretta more than I do the Knights Cavalry fight. Which kind of just leaves the Knights Cavalry as like the most boring, the most repeated, and like the least exciting out of any of the main horseback bosses that occur throughout the game. But I think that pushed us to just enough rooms to where we can go ahead and level up. But that was pretty solid. We made our way through about 3 different bosses, so I think we're going to go ahead and call it for this one, and we're going to get back up later. I'll go ahead and see y'all next time.